But Stoyakovich is a guy that, gives Illinois a score on the perimeter that they desperately needed right now to go along with the Ivicic brothers, with Boswell, with some of their other guys. He gives them another skilled guy that hasn't shot it well from deep his first 2 years in college, which surprised me, Rob, because I remember when we saw him a couple times in Rock Hill a couple summers ago, he shot the hell out of the ball. But he's more scorer than shooter, but he averaged almost 18 a game, not for a great team last year, the Cal Bears, but 18 is still 18 at a high major level. And I think even if he can average 14 or 15 this year for the Illini, it would be huge for Brad Underwood and Illinois. I just think, it's fascinating right now to see the experiment that Brad Underwood has put together in Champaign. You would have thought he was the last coach probably on the planet that would have gone this route and gone full all in with international. I know Stojakovic grew up in the U.S., but certainly his dad has international lineage, and obviously the Ivicic brothers. But he's gone all in, and I think he feels like, talking to him and some people around him, like, these guys are probably a little bit more coachable in a sense than some of the other guys that are coming in right now with higher price tags. And these guys have high price tags as well.
Yeah, I think that the experiment is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, mostly just because, it's a different style of basketball that a lot of these guys are playing. And Stoyakovich is a little bit different. Like, he played his high school ball here. He did the EYBL thing. But Mahalo Petrovic, Dave Markovic, the Ivicic brothers are guys that developed. They really, cut their teeth playing overseas. And it's just a different style. And seeing how the makeup of what more or less will amount to, a EuroLeague team, or maybe like a U21 EuroLeague team at this point, is something that will be really interesting to see how that translates to the Big Ten. I think it is going to work. I'm a little curious how he's going to play the Ivicic brothers together.
Can they guard, though? That's the big – they're going to score. We know Illinois is going to be fun to watch, and they're going to score. They might score more than any team in the country. And last year, remember, they were like good for a stretch defensively, and we were all shocked. And I think one of us, Rob Doster, picked them to be the number 2 team in the country at one point in a 1-versus-2 battle between Duke, Illinois at the Garden in February. That did not come to fruition. They couldn't guard down the stretch.
It's not my fault that the entire roster came down with the flu at the exact same time. Okay. Maybe we need to practice a little social distancing there. Maybe if people are sick, we don't have them like sharing plates, maybe get everyone their own meal instead of having everyone to pick out of the same. It is what it is. Listen, I think that they have good defensive pieces, right? I think that Kai Boswell is one of the better on-ball defenders that you're going to find in the Big Ten. Like, he's a guy that can shut the water off for a lot of different players. I think that Stojakovic is like at least big and versatile on the wing. And then Tommy Ivicic is a guy that he has his flaws, but when he is healthy and he hasn't lost 15 pounds midseason, he can take up a lot of space, and he's a good rebounder. I'm going to go ahead and buy that Mahalo Petrovic, a 22-year-old that was pushing for MVP status in the Adriatic League, is going to come in and at the very minimum be a capable defender in the backcourt. So I think that they got enough to be able to win a lot of games, right? The question is, and this is kind of like a bigger picture question. The question I have is, they are spending this year, right? It's very clear that Illinois is spending. They're not spending more than anybody. There's a lot of teams out there there are at least a couple teams out there that are spending more money than the Illini, but they're going to be somewhere in the top 10 range, maybe even top 5 in terms of how much their roster cost. And I think Brad Underwood has done a really, really good job. If you look at the kind of the results recently, he had the Elite 8 in 2024. He won the Big Ten the year that they had Kofi Coburn at the 5, right? And Illinois has been nationally relevant for a consistent basis for longer than probably since the Bill Self era, consistently year in and year out, nationally relevant. But they haven't quite made the leap. So my question to you, Jeff, is this, where do you view like the job that Brad Underwood has done with Illinois, developing the program and getting this program back to prominence?
I mean, he's done a hell of a job. They've been relevant every year lately, nationally relevant. So, like you said, that's more than we can say under the, the Bruce Weber or the John Gross regimes.
Mhm.
They had kind of moments, spurts, but Brad Underwood has made him relevant every single year. And again, relevance now comes with finances, and he's got finances right now, so they're going to be relevant in the preseason. But the big question is, how do the pieces fit together? Again, I think offensively they're going to be just fine. A lot of these kids who come over, certainly, like you said, they're older, number one, and they're well schooled and taught extremely well. In terms of moving the basketball, in terms of making good decisions, some of those things. But you still worry about them being able to adapt to not just the college game, but just being over here. I think it'll help that they have a bunch of guys that are going through the same thing or have gone through the same thing recently. That'll certainly help these guys that are coming over right now. But it's going to be fascinating to watch how good they are and how Brad deals with it. The great thing about Brad Underwood is he's really adapted at a point when I think a lot of us weren't sure he would be able to, coming from that, Bob Huggins, Frank Martin tree, Andy Kennedy. How would he adapt to this? But he's done about as good a job as anybody in his kind of age group has done in college basketball.
Yep, I tend to agree, man. He's kind of changed who he is. We think of him normally, at least I think of him as a guy that's going to play defense and try to force turnovers and try to really, really push tempo. And we've seen a couple different iterations of what Illinois basketball has looked like under him. So you got to give him credit for that. The other commitment, Cedric Coward